Welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast, an aviation podcast with all things being midlife and flying and sharing our experiences and our fun times and maybe not the not so fun times. My name's Ben. I am a instrument-rated pilot here in the Atlanta metro area, and we're glad that you're here with us tonight for episode 46. Where we're going to be bringing on some guests, some super special guests, wouldn't you say? We have tonight, as always, from the West Coast, switching the order up a little bit, our friend Ted, Fly Sport. Ted, how's it going?
Hey there, doing well.
Good. Yeah. Also join us from Music Row in Nashville, Tennessee, Brian and Katie Siskin.
This is crazy, man.
Hello,
and also joining us from one floor above us, my lovely bride, Terry Singer, also known as Mrs. The Sage. Just want to go, before we jump right into it, I want to remind everybody, you can reach out to us. We love to get feedback. You can reach out to us via midlifepilotpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on YouTube every Tuesday at 8 p.m. at youtube.com/@midlifepilotpodcast. We would really appreciate any and all support you guys can provide. Click the like, thumbs up, follow so you can catch us every week in your player. We do have a couple of new supporters since last episode. I wanted to call them out. Biff B, the Badger Pilot, Leslie C., Brian D., and Jeremy W. all started supporting us via Spotify.
Awesome.
So we really, really appreciate it. It means a lot to us.
Yeah, really happy to see the supporters on there. And if you're on there and you haven't reached out to us, say hi. Recognize a lot of the names on there, but not all of them. And so it's always surprising when we see someone and it's like, oh, you know, it's a small world. Love to say hi and meet you.
Absolutely. We have an amazing community on our Discord server. Send us an email at the Gmail account and we'll get you an invite so you can join us. So with that said, gentlemen, what do you say we get right into it?
Yeah, what are we talking about tonight? And why are all these people here?
So we've gotten several requests via the email and on Discord of some newer pilots who are worried that their spouses aren't going to want to fly with them or are nervous to fly with them. And we thought, well, if we're going to tackle this subject, we might as well bring in the experts, that being our wives.
This is the most high-risk thing that we've done in aviation. It's the podcast with our wives.
We'll go ahead and say it. With Terry on here, I'm more nervous now than I was before any of the other episodes. So, yeah, a little bit. You're kind of seeing me in action, and it's I feel like a spotlight's on me, but that's okay.
Well, I've seen you fly up close, so.
Well, speaking of that, some of the comments that we've gotten is how their spouses, there's some reluctance to get in the plane with them. And I said on a previous podcast, I made the mistake. I invited Terry to come on a flight lesson with me. And during that flight lesson, we were doing steep turns and we did about 7 touch and goes while she's sitting in the back seat, which would have made me nauseous if we were doing that today. So, but we've kind of progressed through our aviation journey together. Tell me what it's like, Terry. Tell me how it was when you first got in the plane to what it is right now.
It's really not that different actually, because I watched you train and study and practice, and I watched you not take any chances. And so I wasn't really that nervous the first time. I don't know. You laugh at me when I'm flying in the plane with you, reading my magazine and not really.
Which I love. That's like the biggest compliment you could give to me.
I was going to say that. He like, yes, Ohio State, go Bucks.
Hey, oh boy. Yeah.
That should tell you that I'm just pretty relaxed in the plane. I mean, I always knew this was an inevitability. I always knew you wanted to fly. So I guess.
How did you know that Ben was into flying?
I think, was it even when we were dating? I'm not sure even then, but he just always expressed an interest in it. And then for his 30th birthday, I gave him a package of a few flight lessons.
Oh.
And then nothing really happened for 20 years.
Just about, yeah.
Did they expire?
Oh, no, we took the lessons. I took 3 lessons.
Oh. Yeah.
But then realized weren't really in a financial position to continue.
Yeah, we had three young kids. So fast forward 20 years, and then he finally had an opportunity to actually do it, thanks to our brother-in-law. And that was it. He had the bug.
So I'm going to slightly put you on the spot before we get to Brian and Katie, but has there ever been a time, and I can think of one time, but has there ever been a time when you're like, oh crap, what's going on?
In the plane?
Not on the altar. Not on the altar.
I mean, daily, but specifically, the only one, there's 2, okay? And they're really not that, but I think this is what you're thinking of. The first time, and you might not remember this, it was a little, I don't know how, I guess it was earlier on. I don't remember where we were flying actually, but I think we were about to land and there was a wind that came in from the side.
That's
right.
Exactly.
I don't know all the technical
We were
jargon.
going to Griffin, and there was there's similar to the airport that you're at today, Brian, we were talking about earlier. There's trees on both sides of the runway, but on one side of the runway, the trees get further and further away from the runway. And there was a crosswind, but it didn't really hit you until you're about halfway down the runway. So my wing got lifted up.
Yeah, we were literally about to touch down and it just pushed us. And we went kind of off into the...
We went off to the very edge of the runway, and then I was able to get it back under control.
Yeah.
And that was probably my most scariest moment in my flying career. Not that anything, I don't think we would have died if anything were to happen, but I would have bent the airplane, and I would have felt really bad about it. But yeah, that probably got my heart racing more than anything else. And then the other one, which is you were thankfully oblivious to, was the landing at Fernandina Beach.
Right.
In basically a low pressure tropical storm. So, but we got it down on the ground and got a flat tire.
The flat tire, yeah.
Right. Yeah, that was kind of fun. So
yeah, that was, yeah. But that's when I was reading like I'm doing like this, like when the voice was it all and we would read. I was reading my magazine. You're like, oh, we have a flat tire. I'm like, we what? But that's just shows. I mean, you touched it down, brought it right back, and we barely felt it. It was awesome.
So Terry, we have this email that kind of started this whole idea for this episode that was from, I forget who it was from, but basically it was just talking about how they were looking for advice. How do I get my spouse to be more comfortable with the idea of flying? Or
let me read that out to you.
Okay, yeah.
So this is from JSH. It's turns out the closer I get to my license, the more she digs in and she doesn't want to be in a plane. Any advice for getting a reluctant spouse flying? Oh,
that's a good question. Well, I would wonder first, I mean, are they a nervous flyer in general? Because I'm not at all. And then have they ever flown in a smaller plane? I really hadn't, I don't think. Had I?
No.
Then? I don't think so.
Not with me. Maybe with your other husband.
I guess part of it just was that I knew what a passion it was of his and how much he loved it and how excited he was to share it with me. And I just was like, whatever reservation, nervousness I might have, which I don't think I really did. I don't know. I just put it to the side. We have to try it. We have to try it once, right? To know if you're
a willing participant for sure.
Yeah.
I chose my wife very well. I'll go on record and say that. But maybe to offer, I see Stuart's responding. I would say, involve her once you have some hours under your belt and you have a lot of confidence in your landing and you find the right day, maybe even involve her in your pre-flight to show her all the variables that you're taking into consideration before you take this flight. The other thing I was going to say that I think makes Terry and I a good partner is there have been flights that I think we could have made, but there was just the risk level was just slightly higher. And I'm like, it's just not worth both of us being in the airplane and taking on this risk. And quite frankly, I might have gone on it if I were by myself. Maybe not, I don't know. But there's been quite a few opportunities for us to go fly somewhere, and we chose not to due to weather or whatever the situation may be. So it's I intentionally fostered that safe attitude early in my flying, and other than putting her in the plane during the lesson and making her nauseous as hell, that was. I did not see that one coming. So, but no, I appreciate you sharing that.
I'd also like to add, the more education that she can have on what you're doing, the better. And I think that's what's kind of helped me through the process of watching the sausage get made, as I like to call it. Because, you know your spouse before they're a pilot, and then they go through all of the studying, all of the training, and you're just... you're having faith that they're doing all the right things, but I think the more you can educate yourself too in the process, the better.
She's seen how I just get completely flustered just trying to open a pickle jar or something, right? Like she's seen me just, be so terrible at so many mundane things. So it makes sense that it's like, oh wait, now you're a pilot now? Okay, let's see how that, why don't you keep training?
Yeah. You lock yourself in your car and you can't figure out how to get out of it, and you're crawling out the window and you're like, let's go flying now. Yeah. So Katie, tell us, how did you know that Brian really wanted to learn to fly? How did you learn about that?
Well, it was during the pandemic and we had some spare time on our hands and being indoors a lot. And he had his father's flight bag that he had kept with him for a while and decided that during the pandemic we'd open it. And so he did. And it was going through that I think it finally dawned on him that this is the time. I've got the time. There's not a lot of other things going on. So why don't I spend the time studying and going for it now?
Yeah, it's different than I think. It sounds like Terry and Ben, like that Ben kind of came into this like doing what I know of cheapskate aviation doing, which is looking up at the sky the whole time, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. A little more like the relationship started, and then the aviation was introduced into the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so Terry, you said that when you were describing something earlier, you said I don't know all the jargon, or, and you were talking about sort of like how you just read a magazine, you just kind of hang out, you just sort of trust. That's a very different dynamic than what because she's watched all of the,
crash videos.
Yeah. All the crash.
Oh, gosh.
Right. Like all the study, like a lot of the sort of awareness that I have, the problem here is that she knows too much. We were flying in the mountains just last week, and we got a wing kind of picked up as we were going over a ridge. And, she says
it was an updraft and then the wing. Yeah.
So she's like, that was like a 40-degree bank. I'm like, it was probably 15, but still. But the whole thing was just out of the blue. I mean, she knew what was happening, but it still freaked her out because everything else had been totally smooth. And then she basically said, she's like, well, we don't have a good place to put it down here. Like, she's really situationally aware and understands all of the emergencies and has gone through all this stuff. So I'm kind of wondering, and obviously, Terry, a lot about what's going on, but you just probably maybe choose to kind of just have an instinct to let it kind of go and just trust, whereas not so much here.
I I mean, I'm definitely paying attention, and he explains things to me, and I do ask questions, but like Stuart said, do you listen to the comms or just read and listen to music? And I actually do listen. I mean, I ask Ben a lot of questions about what I'm hearing them talking about and it's actually really pretty interesting. But so I don't know if this will make things better or worse, but my only thought sometimes is that I feel like he should show me how to kind of land the plane. God forbid if something ever happened. And so that's the only thing I think about sometimes is, God forbid if I had to land the plane, could I even do that?
Put that back up real quick, Ted. I want to hit that, and then I'm going to respond to you, Terry. Teddy Herrera has, excuse me, my wife trusts my flying. She just hated the turbulence the first time. And that's very common. Our oldest son does not do very well on the turbulence at all. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, I recently got a new flight bag because my previous flight bag was filled with his stomach contents after a pretty turbulent day. So I get that. To your point, SoCal Flying Monkey is a YouTuber his wife was a very nervous flyer, and they did as Alyssa's mentioning, did a pinch hitter course.
Yeah, there's a whole spectrum of that.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to do that.
Yeah. And it's not for you to be able to grease a landing, but it is for you to get the plane on the ground and walk away from it.
Right.
Yeah.
And which is, if we can find an instructor around here that'd do that, be great. This was taking place out in California.
I would totally do that.
Katie, I have a question for Katie. How has it changed for you? And Brian mentioned all these videos that you watch, but did you watch, my first question is, did you watch any of his videos that he made while he was learning to fly? Number one. And number two, how is your, I hate the word attitude, but how is your comfort level now versus when he first passed his check ride?
So I watched every single video. After he came home, got it edited, put it up. We watched them all and we debriefed them all. So, I was with him through the process, and it's every flight, it gets a little bit better and I learn a little bit more, and that improves the comfort every time. It also helped to fly when we've had some of our trips and some of our hookups, flying with you, a more experienced pilot, has also helped in the sense of, oh, well, that's totally normal. So that when I'm back in the plane with Brian, I'm like, okay, so Ben did that, Sage did that, you're good. So that also helped. But yeah, every time it gets a little bit better and I learn a little bit more. And every time I'm frightened, I learn that it's okay. And I learn the things that frightened me. And, like I said, just the more you can educate yourself in the process, you have to be willing, if you're going to fly with your partner, you've got to be willing to learn about it. Because that's the only way to get over the fear.
So I was talking to Leslie, who is Josh McElhatton's wife, earlier today. And she talked about what she does in the plane. And so let me play a clip from that.
That's probably something I could get better at and be able to do with a little less prompting. But yeah, he tells me what I need to be saying to them, so I don't just babble like an idiot.
I was asking her if she talks to ATC, and she said, yeah, with prompting. And, so I think there's a lot of different levels of what people want to do versus, what the, kind of the lowest level of that is what can you do in an emergency? And the highest level of that is like Kim from Baron Pilot, who was like, well, I've flown with him a whole bunch. I want to go get my license now. And there's a whole spectrum in between there, and it's all good.
Yeah. Josh mentioned that his wife, Leslie, is going to be doing a partner in command class soon. Which
I think that's the serious version of it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool.
I think also there's a lot of space between getting someone, your partner, up to sort of speed with what's going on versus, committing to a class or a pinch hitter thing. There's a lot in between there. And I think that one of the things that I've been trying to do, especially now that we're kind of settled into a plane and it's not always a different plane or something, is just each flight, just picking one thing, and saying, if, it's like the first time it's, hey, if you press and hold this button, it will just lock everything in place in terms of altitude and heading. And then that will give you time to then look at, the radios. And then the next time it's like, okay, let's look more at the radios. Here's how you tune a frequency or whatever. And remember, just because really there's only a few, unless you're training actually, even if you did a pinch hitter thing, if you do a pinch hitter course and then you don't do anything recurrent to that, and then this incident happens or whatever in 3 years, you're not going to be like, okay, well, that's cool. I'm totally comfortable with what's going on here. Let me just, lean on my training. It's good to have that ultimately for sure. And to feel that success and to see it all the way through. But I think in that meantime, it's sort of like, whether a partner's been through that training and sort of how do you stay sort of recurrent in that modality versus just every time you fly, just don't overwhelm them. Pilots have a tendency to return the torture that we all went through learning, where you drink from a fire hose and then we don't realize that we're just doing it to somebody else. And so just pick one or two things every flight that are easily digestible and let them kind of stitch it together in some way and prioritize those things being things that will help them in a situation.
So I think that's a great point. And I've mentioned this to Terry a couple of times on Final Approach. And well, I was either saying it in my head or I did say it out loud, and I'll probably repeat it a couple of times, but I tell her, I've told you, airspeed is king on landing. And in this airplane, you want to be between 70 and 80 miles an hour. And get that settled in there. And then, okay, so the next time or two, we'll say, here's where you want this throttle setting to be. And this is going to give you that speed. Just point the nose to the ground and you're going to get it on the ground. So I think there's a way to dumb it down to keep it going that way. Okay, do you want to read?
I'm almost imagining just like a product where it's just like a panel overlay that's already, it just mutes out like all the thing. It's like a little thing you just unroll and you just stick it on. It only shows you the essential thing, and it's got all like the arrows of like, you want this here.
I'm gonna put an LED screen there, and it's just going to gray out everything except for what she needs to see. So when I have kind of regular friends that go with me, and each time they go, I have them learn one more thing kind of along an emergency line, right? It's like, okay, the first one, there's the level button. Next time, here's the level button. Here's push to talk. Next one, and it's like each flight, try to get them to know one more thing toward what it would take to get on the ground. The other thing is obviously, here's the parachute, which is really handy for that. That seems to make passengers a little more comfortable.
You should specify what kind of parachute.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just for me. Passengers out of luck. Yeah. So Wendell Geek, there's a lot of different resources. Wendell Geek said, I got a checklist from Checkmate Aviation called Emergency Substitute Pilot. It's within reach of the passenger seat. There's another one that I have called Pilot Workshops, Flying Companion, a pilot-friendly manual. And it's interesting. I think it's really good for someone who likes to just kind of sit in the plane and zone out a little bit. Each one of the steps is a single page, and it's like, here's how you can help in a pre-flight. Here's how you can help with a checklist. Here's how you can tune the radio. And those are 1 or 2 pages in this little booklet. And I think the idea is you can pick and choose the ones that you're interested in doing. And it's an interesting, I like there's a couple of different resources out there for that.
That's cool.
And Ted, don't you have some words from your better half?
Yeah. So I didn't even realize the timing of when I said I wanted to start flying. So here we go.
Go ahead.
Because I know that it took me a while to get the first flight with Sam. just because the weather was really bad. So I was just trying to think of when, kind of the context of that.
It was definitely after the prenup.
Yeah. So we got married in August, and then in December of the same year, I'm like, cool. So let's go fly.
That's historical.
So that's why, well, besides the fact that she's still at school, but that's why my spouse isn't on this is, there's kind of three categories. And I think that our three spouses represent those categories, which is enthusiastic, which is Terry, kind of willing but reserved, which is Katie, and then Kirsten, which is like, it's not no way, but it's, it would take a lot, and I'm not comfortable with this at all. Mm-hmm. And so to go back to some of the chat earlier, that's my thing is I'm not trying to convince her, right? It's, if she wants to fly, she's an adult. She'll fly if she wants to. I enjoy my flights alone. I enjoy my flights with friends. And, if she joins me, that'd be great. We also had, we have a single person in our crowd. And so she was talking about how, of course, it's a little different. That's not really a choice. But that led to an interesting discussion in Discord, which was what percentage of your time has been solo? And I was surprised at where some of these end up. But as our social butterfly would be Badger Pilot, who spends 19% of his time solo, so 80% of the time with someone else. Josh is kind of in there. He's 27% solo. Josh flies his family back and forth in New England quite a bit, so that makes sense. The very social butterfly of the very solo end of that is Alyssa at 70% solo. And then Ben and I are both at about 45%.
Yeah.
So I was surprised that mine was actually that high, that 55% of the time I've got somebody else in the seat with me. I thought it was about 30%. Yeah.
I thought I flew a lot alone, but apparently not.
Yeah.
So, okay, my question is, it's interesting that people fly alone. I like flying alone, but we're on limited time here. We've got Terry and Katie here, and I'm trying to extract as much out of their brains as humanly possible for our folks to benefit from. And so the one thing I wanted to just sort of put out there is a lot of people, I think, get into aviation in midlife and they just visualize or idealize or outright assume that, and part of maybe the mental picture they used to justify becoming a pilot in the first place is I'm going to take my wife and my family and vacations. And, they have a catalog sort of point of view in their head, from the sales pitch, or whatever. And that's really not, in many cases, reality. A lot of people end up in various forms of, my spouse won't fly with me, but my kids love it. Or my spouse will fly with me and my kids hate it, or any number of things. So, what I'm curious about, from Terry and then maybe a Katie after is, what would you like? We probably didn't do it the right way. We just went for it. And then you guys were luckily able to adapt. But what would you recommend to somebody that's thinking about becoming a pilot, and then this is sort of a thing that they have in their mind's eyes to how it's going to go? What would you say to that person, depending on the outcome, right?
Oh boy, that's a good question. I mean, I don't know what Ben really would have done if he'd said, look, I'm ready to do this. And if I would have said, I want no part of it whatsoever. I mean, how would you have responded to that really? Because
so it would have been, I would be on a different track. I wouldn't fly nearly as much, and we probably wouldn't do nearly the same things that we've been able to do as well. But I may not be pursuing a commercial track. I may not be doing, maybe just going up once a week and going down to see dad or whatever. I feel like, kind of to Brian's question, it's situationally dependent upon each independent spouse that's reluctant to get into the plane. I was reading the email from the listener who said the closer he gets to the license, the more she digs in and she doesn't want to be in the plane. And I think if Terry were in that situation, I would just let it be. If she doesn't want to get in the plane, I'm certainly not going to insist that she does.
Yes.
I'm not going to make any ultimatums, but I want her to be around other people that do it. And also, getting a little feedback there, Ted. Are you hearing it? Okay. But also, she and all three of my boys love the utility of being able to go to the Florida coast in under 2 hours. Mm-hmm. So, for those that are out there, and I'm not speaking for your spouse or anything, but let them not fly with you, whatever. But maybe by osmosis, they'll start to maybe latch on.
Yeah, I would just say maybe if they haven't already, just have them come and watch you, take off and land, watch you prep the plane. Maybe the more they feel confident in what you're doing. And anyway, I mean, would you really want your spouse sitting next to you white knuckling it the whole time? That wouldn't be fun for anybody. So I would agree. Just, let them be for now. You never really, there have been times when you've said, oh, do you want to go with me or do you want to, and I would say, no, thanks, I'm good, and you didn't push it. You're like, that's fine. Maybe next time.
All right.
Whatever.
I guess I always knew Brian was doing it for Brian, and it was something he needed to do. And,
Agree.
I was along for the ride if I was willing, and I'm growing more willing every day. And,
right.
I think that you have to think about, why are you becoming a pilot? If it is the idealized, I'm going to do this, that, and the other with other people, it may or may not end up that way. But, if you're doing it for you, then that's all that matters.
That's right.
Well, I think a lot of people buy crazy planes too, right? They're like, okay, I need a Comanche, or like I need to carry 5 people and all this stuff.
A Comanche is your exotic crazy plane?
Yeah, that's the crazy plane. That's just getting totally out there.
Well, let's bring up Josh here, because he is what we tend to think of as kind of having the exotic crazy plane, which is the Cirrus. And he is, as he says, he's the catalog picture of frequent family GA trips. Man, that's what he does, is fly with his family. We had a discussion a couple months ago, and he's like, yeah, I'm not solo enough to practice maneuvers or anything else. And it's like, that's kind of amazing that to have somebody who has such a good fit of a Cirrus is perfect for Josh and his family.
But that's not to say that he doesn't practice maneuvers and such.
Yes, just not until they're asleep.
Oh, yeah. Well, Michael Young can speak to that one.
So showed up on my Instagram reel again. And I'm waiting for the opportunity to do that to Terry, but she doesn't sleep in the plane, so I don't think it's ever going to happen.
Terry, do you know the video we're talking about that Michael Young?
I've showed it to you, where he puts it in 0G and she's asleep.
Oh, yes. And then, yes, that was fun.
She wails on him. Yeah.
It's kind of funny.
I would be so dead.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know how to pronounce this in the chat. Emesny?
I think it's Eames, New York.
Eames, New York, maybe. Okay. Earlier in the chat, I saw he put up that his wife was in the plane and the door popped open. And I wanted to ask him, did she get back in the plane with him on a subsequent flight? Because that has happened to me. I have a Cessna, and Jeff had rightly stated, when one door closes, another one opens. Other than that, it's a pretty good Cessna.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
To be clear, that's not a Piper.
No, it's a Cessna thing.
Because there's only, when one door closes, there is no other door.
That's right. That's exactly right. First flight with mine, her door came open during the climb out. I calmly explained Cessnas, which was the right thing to do. But how would you like for that to be your first flight? Your door popping open. That's not how I would want it to go.
Terry, how would you have felt?
Ben, did that happen with one of the boys?
It happened with Evan.
Yeah. What did he do?
He just kind of looked at me like I did something wrong. And then he said,
did something wrong?
No, like I did something. Had that look like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And then he said, Dad, my door's open.
In typical Evan fashion.
It's exactly how he said it. And I said, well, let's go back and land and shut it. Because we had just literally taken off.
But Terry, you're very willing as well. So as a more reluctant pilot, how would you have felt, or passenger, how would you have felt, Katie?
I probably would have slammed it shut. But I like the idea on a Cessna that I had an out. Like, I don't like the one entrance on the Piper as much.
Yeah.
The door's on your side.
I know. But there's extra latches. I liked knowing that if there was an emergency, I could pop the door. But yeah.
Yeah.
I'd slam it shut.
Yeah. I just, what I'm fascinated by is that these human beings even put up with us just talking about it all the time, much less getting in the planes. And so my question for Terry would be, how do you do it?
Well, I can commiserate with my sister-in-law, first of all, because our brother-in-law is who Ben shares the plane with and flies with. And they talk on the phone quite often, and it's about flying stuff. So, yeah, I was
at any family event, as soon as the word AIR is mentioned, Terry and my eldest sister Mindy, eyes are rolled and they're out the room. That's fine. We're both okay with that.
I'm imagining the four of you out to dinner together, and Ben, you and Kenny start talking, and that's it.
Yeah.
There's 2 hours just talking.
They just go to their own table and they have their own conversation, and
there they go again. Yeah.
So, but here's the thing. There's the flip side of this, which is I know for a fact that because she teaches science to 8th graders, and she has utilized this in lesson plans, and she has to do like an intro thing at the beginning of the year, like here's who I am and da-da-da. She's pretty much presenting herself as a quasi-pilot. What would you have to say for yourself about that?
I just said that I have flown a plane. I didn't say I took it off or landed the plane. I just said I've flown a plane, and I got some respect and some cred from some 8th graders. It works. Yeah. And, I teach physics, so there's a lot to incorporate.
For sure. Yeah.
What are the 4 forces of flight? Okay.
Lift, thrust,
FAA, cash, DPE, fuel.
Exactly.
Oh, here's a great question.
Yep. Do you have criticism that you withhold, or do you let it fly?
I do not withhold my criticism.
Oh, no.
Terry?
In the plane?
Yeah, no, he gets frustrated because I point out everything. And I just like to make sure, everyone can lose focus at some point. So, I just like to make sure that I'm pointing out everything just for safety purposes. Did you see that balloon? Did you see that bird? Did you see? I point a lot.
Wow.
I like it.
She likes to point in front of me like this.
Yeah.
Exactly covering my eyes.
So Terry, how about you?
I definitely do not do that in the plane because I don't know enough about certain things to do that to him. But I do that quite often in the car.
I don't know enough either, but I can't contain myself.
It doesn't let it stop you. Yeah.
Well, here's the other thing is that, since I'm an Android user, the 4Flight subscription I have, I only use it on my tablet. I don't have it anywhere else, but she's an iPhone user. So she's got my 4Flight on her phone. And so this has proven to be good and bad. It's good in the sense that, just because we're right by the airport, so she can use it when we're sitting out on the porch and see who's what. And she's really learned a lot about how to use 4Flight, which is great. But then we get into the air, and then she's also got 4Flight.
Oh, no.
And
I'm
and she
distant
knows
traffic.
there's only one microphone for exactly this reason. if we could we need to do this for life, right? It's like, and who's speaking right now?
Fine. I don't.
Okay, no, but so she sees what's going on. So now it's been a learning curve of we just went through the whole thing on this last trip of like, here's how to hide distant traffic.
Oh yeah.
In ForeFlight. So that prevents 90% of the, hey, what's that? But they're coming over, it's like they're 23,000 feet above us. and then there's like okay, now we've got it down to actual sort of targets, and she's very traffic aware. And depending on the zoom, right? It's like things that look like they're 5 miles might be 12 miles or whatever. So she's starting to get a sense of sort of what to be kind of concerned about. And the more you kind of experience planes, how close planes can actually get to you, especially in busy areas, that helps. But for a while there, it was, she's got too much information and not enough sort of desensitization.
So it's no different than pilots gaining experience, passengers gain experience as well, and she's going to get better and better at it. That's all. If we ever approach this topic again, I'm going to go ahead and go on record. We're going to invite Josh and his wife Leslie on.
Oh yeah,
because this is getting more and more interesting in the chat as we go along. Josh has said Leslie has withstood A, her door popping open upon takeoff, B, a fuel leak on the wing after takeoff, and worst of all, C, my incessant talking about pilot-y stuff. I would like to have a little more in-depth conversation with Leslie.
Let me. So I was talking to Leslie earlier. Let me pull up something that she was saying about when she first started flying.
I was nervous more by the idea of it than by actually being up. Like once we got off the ground, it just felt awesome. It was cool to like see Josh doing something that he had worked so hard to be able to do. And then it was so beautiful.
That was like, oh, that's perfect. Yeah. That's the experience you want people to have, right? Is, wow, I got off the ground and I got to see so many great things.
I take a ton of pictures.
Oh, yeah.
When we're up there.
Especially when we're going into St. Simon's, because that's one of my favorite approaches, and it's really pretty going in there.
Beautiful. I like flying through the clouds, too. It's very cool.
Yeah, the last time I flew to St. Simon's was with Ben. We were outrunning some lightning.
Was that when you had several landings at St. Simon's?
You mean on one pass? Let's be more specific.
Yeah.
That wasn't officially the several landing one. It was the day after.
Oh, okay.
That was my initial arrival. I wanted to announce that I was there, and I did so with 3 touch and goes.
Well, let me put that out there as actually another word of advice coming from my perspective, which is, because my contention with Katie was like, wait a minute, you fly with Josh. She's flown with Josh. She's flown with Ben. She's flown with a lot of people here. No hesitation, no problem. Had a great time. Everything was totally cool. And then, with me, it's again, she's like, I knew you when you were not a pilot. These people I didn't know. And so, I find it kind of shocking, right? Like when we were at St. Simon's, she's in the back seat of your 182, getting bounced all across tarnation down there. No, but outrunning storms and like doing a pretty, like that was an aggressive, had to get it down approach that you did.
It was, and
all that. And I was kind of, concerned, right, about, okay, what kind of shape is she going to be in when she rolls up? And she looked like she was happy and just got off a roller coaster. And did you see that lightning? That was so cool. And whatever. If it was me and her, she would have been like, we gotta get this plane down now. So
I will say, if Terry knew me in college, she would probably be on the very same footing that Catherine is on with you.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely would, because you always say, oh, the boys they're just like me when I was that age. So that gives me something.
Oh, yeah. Well, gosh. And so, but I guess my point is just in terms of a piece of advice that's kind of maybe not traditional and something short of pinch hitter courses and all that. It may seem not intuitive, but allow set up opportunities for your spouse or partner or whatever to go and fly just in, even if with an instructor or just another friend that's capable or whatever, and just get some experiences that are outside because I think that there's something perhaps slightly psychological or something, or if you're wrestling nervousness as well as, and especially if that has to do with like mortality or things like that, right? It's like to be combining that in this echo chamber of your relationship. And then also, driving across town, like we can be like, are you just backseat driving again? Right. So, couples have maybe some dynamics they need to kind of sort out, but first get just the comfortability there. And so maybe a piece of advice would be to go fly with somebody else.
It's a great idea.
Yeah, maybe they never come back if they have a nicer plane, but that's fine.
So, Wendell Geek is asking Terry, does the turbulence going through the clouds bother you? And you can go ahead and speak on to turbulence not in the clouds as well.
Is it weird to say that I kind of like it?
I do too. I think it's fun.
Okay, good. Yeah, it doesn't bother me at all, really. No, I like it.
She's the more like roller coasters was kind of her thing when it wasn't maybe as mine as much. So I was nervous about that, taking her up for the first time, especially going through a layer, and there was some bumps in there. I was like, please don't let this spoil everything. So, but no, I have a pretty awesome pastor here.
I'm just so glad this has been a very valuable episode, but the most valuable part just happened for me, which is we now have on record, and I'm going to excerpt this and put it on my phone, her saying, yeah, I like turbulence too. Got it.
I have not experienced the kind of turbulence where my head is hitting the ceiling.
Oh, yeah.
Like you described in the Marfa trip.
And I'll say I don't like that either. So
I'm more of a person. I don't like the feeling of turbulence when you're ascending. So like it feels fun and normal when you're coming down or when you're descending, but when you're going up, same with takeoff. I don't like the feeling of losing any traction when you're trying to go up.
When you're close to the ground, it bothers you.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's kind of universal. So Terry, if you did have a phase of flight that makes you perhaps more nervous than another, would you say it's takeoff or landing or what?
I think if any of it would be more the approach towards landing. But the last few landings that I've been in the plane with Ben, I mean,
Here it comes.
I'm complimenting you.
I know. I'm bracing for it.
Yeah, they were like, and one of them, my mom was in the plane with us, so that was really a lot of points to you. That was great. So, yeah,
I am like up here right now. There's only one place for me to go from here.
Don't get used to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I find it interesting just because your least favorite phase of flight is without a doubt taking off, and landing doesn't bother. She can be in the bumpiest landings and crazy approaches and whatever. She doesn't care at all because what do you say? It's just like, well, we're getting closer to the ground. So it's almost like
that's got to be better. Right.
Yeah.
It just feels like the natural course of action. You're just losing any feeling out from under you when you're ascending is frightening to me.
Yeah.
It goes against nature.
Well, I think also as a physics teacher on takeoff, you're going to be at you're accelerating and going up. Whereas when you're landing, you're decelerating and going down. And there's that safety factor that maybe, or that internal instinct of this could be more dangerous going faster. And
it feels like there's less options.
Sage just gave us some real wisdom there, which is when you take off, you're going up, and when you're landing, you're going down. I didn't want to overlook that. Hey, Katie, I've had a note sitting here in our show notes for a little while. Tell us about the Bowling Green landing.
Which one?
The last one.
It was great.
That's right. What's the other one he's talking about?
I don't know.
The Bowling Green landing. Which you're referencing some sort of traumatic experience, but we have so many.
That's all I had in my notes. Yep.
I really only have one traumatic experience, and it wasn't a landing. It was, there was a plane that wasn't on radar that came out of nowhere, and we had to do some evasive maneuvers, and it was pretty early on in my experience flying with Brian. But I don't remember a Bowling Green landing.
It might. Yeah, I don't.
That's all right.
I'm not sure what it's about, but you've seen her you've seen her rate some of my landings. She is tough, man. I think it's a pretty good landing. She says a 4.
I took a long time to think about it.
but yeah, let's talk
5 though.
But let's talk about Bowling Green. So the last landing at Bowling Green, it was a direct crosswind, could you even tell that we landed? I feel like you didn't even know.
He's so humble.
And that's what comes along. That's what you get when you become a pilot. Humility.
Said no one ever. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Anything else we want to get out there before we wrap up?
Yeah, Terry, this has been an honor and a privilege, of course, and we want to give you the complete platform. If you have anything you would like to get off your chest, or feel like you haven't said anything yet, or if you just want to talk about Ben in ways that we would find comical.
That would be a whole nother episode in and of itself.
How much time do we have? No, I just want to thank y'all for having me on. This has been fun. I do have a question, but I could save it I could tell Ben and he could bring it up in another episode.
Oh, no. It's got to come up now. Yeah.
Well, it's not specific to Ben, but my question is, I'm wondering if all pilots are superstitious.
Huh.
Because Ben has some things that he does in the plane that, are kind of, I don't know if is it a superstition so much as just like I have to do this every time.
Okay. So that's I do flows and then back it up with a checklist. So are you talking about where I talk about fuels on both?
No, that stuff you have to do.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No, this is like when you say your little prayer
before. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what happens if you forget?
I have forgotten and nothing seems to happen, but no, I do have my superstitions. No, that's fair.
I'm just picturing you like, he's like, now I'm the sage, and he's got like actual sage and he's burning sage.
So there's a Jewish prayer that is the watchword of our faith, and it's very, very short. It takes like 3 seconds to say.
Oh yeah.
And I do that right before takeoff. And actually in my customized checklist, I have that on my checklist to say before takeoff. But okay. I mean, it's, I do the walk around exactly the same, like the same exact path. So I don't know.
It's somewhere between superstition and routine. And honestly, there's a correlation, I think, between those two phenomena,
It's the routine that nothing bad's happened yet. So I'm going to keep doing that same routine.
The exact same.
That's
right.
where the superstition comes in, I guess. But that's a great question.
I think I respect tradition.
I was going to say, if you're listening to this on the podcast, email us of a superstition you may have. Would love to get that feedback.
Mm-hmm. Brian's not superstitious, but he's a little stitious. No, he does. He is required, however, to tell me every time he lands if I'm not with him. And I get that text every time.
I have a U Avionics ADS-B, so it barely works. So she is maddened by the fact because she follows all the flights and follows everything that's going on. And then I always, if I'm coming in to land, I'm gone at 1,800 feet every time. Every flight I take, I didn't make it.
So I'm going to get Brian in trouble here. Katie, there's a thing that you can do that when your other half gets his IFR certificate, you can go into FlightAware and create alerts. So he doesn't have to text you. When he files a plan, you'll get a note. When he takes off, you'll get a note. And when he lands, you'll get a note.
I already get that, but the note is delayed upon landing. It's like, 10, 15 minutes.
Well, so this is a little bit better because it's IFR flight plan based. So then you can use FlightAware for alerts, and people should know if you haven't done that. That's a great way to keep spouses in the loop. But even further, yes, for IFR, since you actually have to file a flight plan that's that and right, so and you can see the route and you can see all the so you can get really rich information. It only costs, I don't know, like $15,000 to get me to that level. So we'll talk about that.
Yeah, because a lot of times I know when Ben's landed before he even texts me.
Yeah. So Teddy's posted something up here. Teddy Herrera. I feel like if I don't tell my wife I'm flying, something might happen. And I am right there with you. That's the only time bad things are going to happen is when you don't do what you're supposed to do.
Well, I mean, but let's be also real. It's like she commutes to Brentwood every day. It should be like, okay, tell me when you, it's like, this is bonkers traffic here. It's so insane. And it's martial law on the roads here. We haven't seen anybody get a speeding ticket or anything in like 5 years. Like, it is absolutely insane. It's road warrior out here. So she should be sending me a text every day, when she arrives.
Routine, though. It's that routine that I have that I feel like keeps me from crashing my airplane, which has no relevance to it whatsoever. Yeah. Whether my airplane crashes or not, that makes me superstitious, not just a little stitious.
What I think is funny is it's like, not to get dark about it, but I find myself laughing of, thinking that I'm trying to avoid this sort of recourse that I will not even be alive to receive.
That's great. Well, why don't we wrap it up?
She'll find a way. She'll find a way. She will find a way.
They always do. Well, thanks, guys, for joining us. Again, please do not forget to subscribe or follow Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcast. Tedder will have in the show notes, or the doobly-doos as we're calling them now, links to some of these topics that we've been talking about. Please, any support you can provide us, 99 cents a month goes a long way. We have new equipment. We need new mics. There's things that need to get done and pay for. We appreciate all the support that comes to us, and any more that we can get, that'd be great.
If we get a little more support, I don't have to eat cat food anymore. So I'm looking forward to this show paying for itself.
While
in
Brian
the doobly-doo,
and I are dining on caviar and lobster, we're making Ted.
Oh no, that's where all the money's going. The support links are down in the doobly-doo on the podcast and on YouTube. Subscribe on Spotify. You can support us on Spotify, 9 cents a month or more. That's somewhere between 22 and 24 cents per hour that we've come up with.
Should we tease a little bit about the next episode?
I was about to join that. Super special guest coming up next week.
Before we announce that, the date is different as well.
Okay. Yeah. Well, if y'all let me finish.
Nope. I'm not going to let you finish. Yeah. So next Tuesday is Halloween.
So we're going to podcast on Monday night, the 30th. I will be live from Henderson, Kentucky, but we will be streaming live and we have a very special YouTuber that a lot of people know and a lot of people like. I'm very excited about it and excited to meet him. Are we going to mention his name?
No, not yet. But let's just say probably one of the premier voices in aviation through the YouTube and content channels. But also, I think the conversation specifically,
yes,
is going to be very interesting because it's not just about, hey, meet this person or whatever. Right. It's really about something. Everybody here pretty much consumes a lot of aviation themed YouTube content. And perhaps that's even the gateway drug that got a lot of us here into this predicament. But I think that, we've talked a lot about sort of what is the future of aviation, quote unquote, YouTube and the state of that kind of content, and I think it's been an interesting thing to watch how things have evolved or de-evolved or opened up in certain areas or maybe closed off in others, and what kind of content the system kind of rewards and maybe the types of content that it doesn't. So it's really going to be a rich conversation around the state of aviation YouTube and where it's going.
Yep. So please tune into that. And again, you can get us from any podcast Saltotted commented, I think it's hilarious that you want a bunch of over 50 pilots to figure out Spotify. Well, there are other ones. He brings up a great point. I'm not debating him. It took me a while to get there. A lot of us over 50 folks, do have kids that can help us with that. So anyway, guys, it's been a fun night. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Leslie and Kirsten, for contributing as well. And we'll see you guys next week, next Monday at 8 o'clock.
Monday.